sound, so I'm hoping the sound works. Okay, so the video is going. I'm going to take over the whole screen there. I'll get up the Management Studio. Actually, let's do usually SQL Server Management Studio. Slowly. Okay. I will connect. I'm going to take over the whole screen. I think I will zoom. No, I don't have to zoom. Let me just change my fonts real quickly. I'm going to go to Tools, Options. Just as an aside, if you ever use this program much, Tools, Options is where you can change everything. Right? It's where all the configuration stuff is. And if I go to Fonts and Colors, I can change my font. I'm going to change it to about 20. It should be visible from the back. Actually, I didn't want to click out of there yet. I'm going to go back to Tools, Options. I'm going to change the font for the results, text results. I'm going to make that about 18. And grid results, I'm going to make about 18. And it tells me that I have to start over. I mean, I have to reopen to make those effects ticked things, so I'll do that. And then we'll get going. The stuff that I'm going to do today is the SQL, and I will post it in the blog, which you can get to through the syllabus. So there will be an example of the SQL in the blog. Have any of you done SQL before? You've done a little? Yeah. Anyone else? A little bit. SQL is, or SQL, some people will say never say SQL, but I usually do, is a language that goes with relational databases. The SQL is basically 80 to 90% the same on any platform, whether you're doing Oracle or SQL Server or MySQL or Postgres SQL. The language is about the same. It's an ANSI standard. Does anybody know ANSI? American National Standards Institute. It's also ISO, International Standards Organization. So most databases try to conform to the standard. The thing about the standard is that it also allows them freedom to add stuff. So most of the, if you're doing Oracle, they have their own functions and their own tools that are added to the SQL. SQL Server has those also. MySQL has some. They all have their own additions. So, and SQL is a fairly natural language. I'm going to, so right now it says master. So I'm going to use, I forget what I named it. Vincent's Vinyl, I think. Is it Vincent's or Vincent's Vinyl? Well, I'm trying to remember which one has data in it. Now I could show you this with, now in most environments you need a semicolon. Here you don't have to have a semicolon. SQL Server ignores it for the most part. So you can have it or not. To execute it, you can press F5 or that little green triangle. And when I do this, it's just going to say that it's successful, right? What I've done is I've just changed the database context. Right, so I'm now in Vincent Vinyl. So I'll find out if I have anything here. I'm going to do select asterisk from album. So if I have albums, they will show up here. So it's not as big as I hoped at the bottom, but I do have some albums. So this syntax, select means you just, these are the, you're saying what you want to select. What do you want to see? The asterisk is a wild card saying just return it all. So select it all. From indicates which table you're going to come from, and then you name the table. So I'm saying select all from the table album, basically. That's really pretty English-like, right? It's not a terrible thing. SQL is fairly readable, fairly easy to follow. It can get complicated. It is a programming language, but yeah.
So when you want to select something specific, you just put in the ID?
So yeah, so we could do, let's say we only wanted the title and the studio, or the title and the year. We didn't care about the studio. We could do select album title, comma, album studio, from album. Now, one of the things you can see is that I'm not consistent on my capitalization. Why do I have a studio? That's a typo. But you have to, it has to match, even if you typed it wrong. All right, so I'm going to highlight that one. If you highlight it, it only runs the one you highlight. And see, it only returns the two columns that I asked for. I don't know if I told you guys this, I usually do this spiel. SQL is considered a fourth generation language. Does that mean anything to anybody? Okay. Anybody have a guess what the first generation would be? Yeah, basically machine language binary. So I'll just do, and as you can see what a comment, dash dash makes a comment. So first generation is machine language or binary. What do you think second?
Command lines?
What?
Command lines?
Not so much command lines as assembler. You guys know assembler? Assembler is basically binary with some verbal cues. When you're writing an operating system, actually they don't even do it for operating systems anymore, but they do for drivers and things. When you're getting down to the level of, because a driver is basically to communicate the hardware to the operating system. So at the hardware level, it has to deal with switches and things being turned off and on and et cetera, and registers and things like that. Assembler does all that, but you don't have to do it in zeros and ones. You can say put this value at this registry address, move it from this registry address to this registry. I mean, it's really low level, and it's really mostly used for talking to hardware. They do sometimes do it, although less than it used to, because most operating systems won't allow it. But they used to do it for games quite a bit too, for speed, because you could be a lot faster than if you have to go through the operating system to the hardware. So that's assembler. Third generation. This is just mostly for interest. Any guess?
Compiler?
Yeah, it's basically, well, it's compiler and also interpreted. It's basically every language you've ever dealt with, right? So it's Python, it's C++, C#, Java, C. I mean, it even Fortran and COBOL. What? So which? I don't know. I don't know it. So it's.
It has a compiler, so probably.
Yeah, well, this is sort of a compiler underneath actually underneath SQL is C++. But the difference between these languages and a fourth generation language like SQL is that these are all procedural. What that means is you have to spell out step by step what you want to do. All right, they're different than the assembler or the machine because each command is actually a whole batch of commands. So when you say print X, like in Python, underneath that all, there are probably 30 commands that tell it to go find X at a certain registry, move it to this registry, do this and that and bring it up to the screen, right? So there's a whole bunch of machine level commands. Computers are really stupid. To do anything takes 50 or 60 machine level commands, But when you say print and you compile that line or interpret it, it turns it into the machine language batch and it executes it. All of these are procedural. If you were to do this line, select album title, album studio from album, in say Java or C or C++, you would have to go find where the file is, right? So you'd have to locate the things. You'd have to loop through the records to find the correct, things that match it. Then you'd have to write it into some kind of structure for presentation, probably a list. And then you would need to loop through the list to display it on the screen, right? Those are all steps you'd have to do. All that happens, but you don't have to say any of that with SQL. You just say, I want to see these things. And it's magically there. It's not, as I said, underneath it, there is C++ code that's locating it in the file, looping through it, doing all of that. But with SQL, you don't have to say that. It's not procedural. You just say what you want to happen, not how it has to happen. And it's nice that way. So that's what it is. Fourth generation is what you want to see, what you want to do, not how. The other things that are sometimes called fourth generations languages, which is why I wasn't sure about Lua, is a lot of the things where you drag and drop and it generates code for you.
Lua is scripting.
It's scripting?
So
probably, yeah. There are a lot of little languages I don't know. Actually, a lot. I don't know Fortran and COBOL, but I know a bit of all the others.
It was a really small one that you can run it from 3 kilobytes.
Yeah. So
people use it for coding inside of other things.
That's actually, yeah, one of the, I think, new fields, which is not really relevant to this discussion, but device programming. They're programming refrigerators, they're programming stoves, they're programming every doorbell. Everything is programmed, and the thing is that they tend to not have memory on the gigabytes like computers. They tend to have memories in kilobytes or less. So the code has to be really precise and not use much memory. In your car, I was surprised. I think in a Toyota, I have a Prius. I think I read that there was something like 2 million lines of code in the computer in the Prius. So it's a full-fledged computer, basically. All right, so these are selects. Anything you want, let's do one more. I'll just select star from person, and I'll run that. So a couple of little modifications I'm going to do to show you here too. So that just brings back everything. I have a person table. My layout is a little different than yours. Most of you have a customer table, an employee table, and a my brain is shot. Like a people that sell to you. Vendor table. Or some variation of that. I put them all into a people table. I kind of mentioned that. And then it's just the numbers that are distributed, their key field that is distributed that tells whether they're a vendor or an employee or whatever. So if I were to do select star from employee, and again, I'll just highlight that. I have just two numbers there, employee 1 and person 1. Right. So there's no, I'll show you in a way how to fix that in a moment so you can get their names, but. Okay, couple of things that I want to do. So let's go back to person. I was hoping this would be a little bigger when I ran it down below. I mean, I could zoom it, but I imagine you can't see it from the back, can you? You can make it out. How about the far? You're pretty far back. Far back. I actually have a version of this you could download if you wanted to run it. Exactly what I've got, but I can magnify a little bit. I hate the magnifier, but I'm going to, I don't want to magnify by 200%. I want to do, that's 125. Is that any better? I don't know. It's almost worse. Anyway, the reason I wanted to kind of show it, and if you want, I'll zoom up again. You can sort these. So if I do order by person last name, and I'm going to run those two lines, they're now in alphabetical order by person, right? So you can order by, if I wanted him to do them in reverse order, I could just do DESC, and now they're in reverse order alphabetically by last name. So you can sort them however you want. And if you do multiple sorts, you just separate them by commas, and it'll do the first sort will be the highest the first sort, and then there'll be a subsort. So if you did it by year, you could sort all of the things by year, and then if you did the second sort by month, it would all be by year, and then a secondary sort by month, and then etc. So you can do some nice things with that. A couple other things I wanted to mention about SQL that I got distracted on the generations. Notice it is not case sensitive. Almost every language, even Python, is case sensitive, but SQL is not. The semicolons are optional in here. Some environments, the semicolon is not optional, like Oracle. MySQL will let you do it without a semicolon, but then the next statement it'll complain because the one above it doesn't have a semicolon. But in this environment, it pretty well ignores it. You guys have questions on selects so far? I'm going to show you some other stuff we can do. So you can order by, I'm trying to think of what else there was, but I mean, the other thing I'll say is this is real quick and easy, and I don't mind if you use it for a lot of things. But you probably don't want to do that in a programming environment, like if you were writing software to talk to the database, because one, this takes more processing time because it has to go in and figure out what the columns are and then return the columns. Secondly, if they've changed the database since your application last spoke to them, you might get back unexpected things. Whereas if you ask just for the columns, hopefully you just get those. Okay, so simple selects. So those, I'm going to add a couple of other things. So we would like to know, let's do, I'm going to go back up to album. So I'm going to select star from album. I've got 3 things from Columbia, partially because I don't know of a lot of record albums. I could have done Sub Pop or something. But let's say I want to know just which albums are from Columbia as a studio. So we do it from album. And then you can have where album, and again, I spelled studio wrong, equals Columbia. And again, it's not case sensitive, but I'll do it as caps. So if I do that, it returns only the ones that are from Columbia, the studio. So where lets you set criteria for what you're looking for. Question?
When you're using like an album ID, how do you reference that?
So you could do that. So you could say if you wanted to return like just a particular album. Let's say we want to return just 3. You could just do where album ID equals 3. You don't have to quote numbers. I'm going to show you in a moment how to make a join, which is, I think, more what you're thinking about. When you use words, you have to quote it. When you don't, otherwise you don't.
You use either quotes?
Yeah, you need quotes. So let's, I'm going to.
Use either of the quotes?
No, you can't. It has to be single quotes. I'll show you. So I'm going to do, again, where album studio on, I don't know how I got an in there, equals Columbia. And again, it's not case sensitive, so this will work as well as with the capital. Now, if I put double quotes on there, it'll give me an error because it reserves double quotes for identifying columns. It'll say invalid column name Columbia. And this isn't SQL Server alone. I do think MySQL lets you use either quotes, but most of the other databases, they treat single quotes differently than double quotes. It's also for dates. I need something with a date. So let's do select star from purchase. I'm not sure how many purchases I have. And is it purchase? I think it is. So I have 2, and there's 2 dates in there. It's hard to see. 2018 and 12/15 and 12/20. So if I do, I want to do select where purchase date equals 12, so it's 2018. Let's do the second one. You can enter the date the way it is, but SQL Server will allow me to do 12/20/2018. And I put it in single quotes, and it will return that. It's a little bit dangerous because a lot of the databases won't allow you to do that. A lot of them you have to enter it like this. 2018-12-20.
And does it have, if the month is less than 2 digits, you have to be like 09?
You don't in SQL Server. Some of them require that. This is actually, the way it is down here, which I know you can't see very well, is the universal database way of doing dates. They decided on year, month, day.
That's also the international date.
Yeah. That's why they decided on it. And as I said, SQL Server lets you enter dates pretty much however you want. You can put dashes here too. It's fine. It interprets them all. But I will show you a couple of functions. I don't know that I asked you to do any of these, but let's do select. I'm going to do purchase ID, and I'm going to do year. and I'll do purchase date. And then I'll do from purchase. And you might notice you can break your lines wherever you want, right? That's perfectly valid. In the select, you always have commas between values, but not after the last one. If I do this, what it does is it extracts the year from the date, right? You can do that. That's what the year function does. It extracts the year from the date.
And does that work no matter what type it's stored in, as long as it follows that?
It only works for date types, date and time types. So date, time. You can do time too, because you can actually extract hours and minutes and seconds. Yeah.
Yeah, mine didn't work.
Okay.
I'm not sure. Is that incorrect syntax? I don't know what that means.
I'll get rid of the comment there.
Oh, can you make
Because that one selects our from. Yeah, just get rid of this. And if you notice how I'm selecting one, if you select it, it'll run only it. If you don't select anything, it'll run everything. Questions on that? So, and if I wanted to do month, it would be exactly the same, except I would say month. Notice it says no column name there. If you wanted to alias it, you can. So I'm going to do it all caps year. Notice I'm using double column quotes this time because it's for a column. And now it says year there. It's just an alias for the column name in the results. Okay, so we did where, you can do this with numbers too. I'm going to do just select star from sale detail. And we have, this has all numbers in it as a table. So we have the sale detail ID, we have the sale ID, we have the inventory ID, we have the discount. I don't know, I could show you how to calculate the price. We'd have to go out to inventory and then come down to here. I mean, we'll do some joins in a minute. But let's say we wanted to find discount greater than 0. Right, so I'm just going to say where sale detail discount, oops, is greater than 0. And it will show me the two that are 5. So you can do the where with numbers too. Numbers don't have to be quoted. Dates and character types do. That makes sense? I'll look at the assignment in a bit to make sure I've covered everything in the assignment. Let's talk a little bit about joins. This is where it gets interesting, but it also gets a little bit harder. Are there questions of the stuff up above? Does that make sense? I mean, it's pretty simple just to retrieve stuff. So joins, you know how we tore the tables apart in the relational design. Joins are about bringing them back together. This is where the keys and the foreign keys come together. So let's say we wanted to know, well, let's not do this one right away. Let's say we wanted to know the name of our employee. Remember that we did select star from employee? And when I run that, I just get 1, 1. So if I wanted to know that person's name, let's do select. Did I name? I don't remember. what I name my fields. So in person. So I did do person, first name, person, last name. Here's something I probably shouldn't show you. You can just drag these fields up. They put square brackets around them. That's another thing you can do if they don't. SQL Server doesn't assume you use legal names. Legal names mean it's not a function name, it's not a keyword name, and also it doesn't have any spaces in it. Can't have a %sign, any of that. It doesn't assume that you follow the rules. So but if you put square brackets around it, then you can have spaces and you can have illegal characters. So it does that by default. You don't need to put them around if your things are good. So I drug those in from over here. Let's do also, I'm going to do employee key. And again, you can leave those on or not as you wish. And I'm going to do from, oops. We'll do employee first. And then I'm going to, this one is from employee. These two are from person. So I'm going to inner join person. And then you have to say how those two tables relate. And I'm going to say on employee dot person ID is equal to person dot person ID. So we're telling how those two tables relate. And when I run this, what is employee key? Oh, it's employee ID. When I run that, it will bring back, it's Jason Smith is the name of the employee. So it brings back data from two tables. It joins them together. Does that make sense? So we're joining two tables, employee and person. It's an inner join because it's showing us what matches. So the key, the person key and employee is 1. So if I execute that, the person key and employee is 1. So it's going to only bring back that person, the person that has the person key 1. And that's Jason Smith. And if we want to look at in person, we did person somewhere up here. Jason Smith is the first person with the person key 1, person ID 1. Does that make sense? We'll do a couple more joins. Let's look at inventory. I'm curious about something. This is for my curiosity. You don't necessarily have to do this. Okay. The reason I was trying that is that you could do this instead of on in PostgreSQL. I was just curious if you could do it here. It has nothing to do with us. All right, so we have to do it this way. So we say what tables we want. We list all the fields no matter what table they're from. You say what table you want to do. You're from one of the tables. You join whatever other table you want, and you do tell how those two tables relate. Let's look at inventory, and then I will do a couple of other things here. And then we'll be done. Select, so I'm going to do the select star from inventory. So let's just run that. Okay, so we got a purchase detail ID, an inventory ID, a condition ID. Let's kind of build up. This is going to be complicated, but we'll try to build this up to where we can see what album it is, what the condition name is. You know, right now it's just numbers, except for the prices, right? It's not particularly readable. So we'll start with the condition because that's easiest. So I will do select condition, and I don't remember if it's condition name. So I'm going to do, let's do inventory ID. Condition name. For right now, I'm just going to do purchase detail ID. I'm going to put it here. You can put the columns in any order you want when you're selecting. And then we'll do the inventory sale price. Okay. From inventory. Now the one field that isn't in inventory is condition name. So I'm going to do inner join condition. And we'll do it on inventory dot condition ID equals condition dot condition ID. So one of the things you have to know, not condition ID, I need condition dot condition ID. It needs to know what table the condition ID is from. So if I do that, it tells me what condition they are, right? Good, good, mint, fair, fair, good, fair. So we got those in there. Now let's, to get the album name in for the purchase detail ID, or to get the album name in here, we could do that. It's a little more complicated. So how do I do that? Let's do album name right here. I'm going to leave the purchase ID in there. All right, that's going to take some joining. So we have to go to purchase. So I need to do another inner join. Purchase. And I have to say how that relates. Purchase. Actually, I don't need to purchase. I just need purchase detail. Purchase detail dot purchase detail ID equals inventory dot purchase detail ID. Did you have a question?
Yeah. You know, the Molevar identifiers would not be bound.
So there's a couple of things. This can't be found because we haven't got there yet. What did you do? The previous one?
On mine, when I try to interjoin one, when I'm trying to set.
Is there any typos in it?
I don't think so.
I could take a quick look. Recognition ID. Yeah, so I think rather than inner join, notice I'm doing inner join on. I think you need to do it that way. I don't think you can just do the inner joins. Because you have to say how each table joins in, and it has to be unambiguous. Yeah.
Got it.
So I'm going to try inner joining album on album dot album ID equals purchase detail dot album ID. Now, some of yours might or might not work. Now, I don't remember if I named it album name or album title. It's album title, that's why that's unhappy. This one is unhappy because it's in more than one table. So I have to say what table it belongs to. And then it'll be happy. Let's see if that works, if it gives us back what I want. So it gives me, for my purchase now, I have the inventory ID, the purchase detail ID, I have the album title, I have the condition name, and I have the inventory price. By joining, you can keep joining things. So we have what, 4 tables here? We have inventory, we have condition, we have purchase detail, and we have album. But we brought all that information back together. And because we have purchase detail ID, we can also put the purchase date there. So we could put everything from purchase. So purchase, I need to look at purchase and see what purchase detail. Actually, I don't have the date there. I'd have to go back up. Purchase price, though, might be good. So I'm going to do, let's do purchase price over here. And you can break these lines. So you can see now the purchase price versus the suggested sale price. So you can bring the information back together. Nothing that I am going to have you do in your assignment involves that many checks. Just to let you know. I just wanted to show you that it could be done. I think that's all I'm going to say about joins. There are other kinds of joins, but I'm not going to go into them right now. There are outer joins, and there are full joins, and there are natural joins, and there are cross joins. But 90% of the time, what you're going to do is an inner join, so I think I'm just going to hold on those. Question on that? Yeah. Either one, whoever wants to go.
So I just tried it and it didn't work. I'm not sure why. It's saying that a lot of my stuff was ambiguous column names.
So an ambiguous column name means that it's in more than one thing. So notice how I have purchase detail, purchase ID. That's because purchase detail ID is in 2 tables, and it needs to know which table to come from. It doesn't matter with an inner join which table you choose. But if a column is in more than one table, you have to qualify it. That's what we're doing, qualifying it. Kind of like down here, we're qualifying table name dot field name. And the reason we're doing that is that because the primary key and foreign key have the same name. You had a question?
Yeah, I was about to ask this.
Okay. I can look real quickly. So purchase detail ID is the ambiguous.
So it didn't
Right, because it's in 2 tables as well. So you need to do like purchase detail dot purchase detail.
I just can't follow because I don't have this. I don't have any data to put stuff in. So I just put it as 2 ones and 10.
Because you have to, if they're in more than one table,
Yeah, there's I didn't exactly do that. So, I was just curious. Since you have purchase price and purchase, are the sale price beside each other? Are you able to do just like a simple math equation
you could.
on the line?
You could. So, what math equation do you want me to do? Like what percent they are, or how much?
Yeah, or just yeah.
The difference, maybe.
Yeah, the difference would.
So yes, you could. That's actually a very good question. So I'm going to do a comma there, and then I'm going to do, so we'll do inventory sale price minus purchase price. And I'll just, if I do, that'll give it a field name. But this is an alias. We could do as to make it clear if we want. Yeah, you can do math in there. And you could get what percent, like, if you have the purchase price and if you're strict about the inventory, I mean, I didn't do this, but you could multiply it by a percentage thing to figure out. That answer the question?
Thank you.
Yeah, you can do math with the columns if they're numeric. Anything else on this? I mean, I actually, next quarter too, it's being offered again. I teach a whole quarter of SQL. There's enough for a quarter and more, in it, including math, and there's built-in functions galore. I'll show you a couple, but they've got, there's sum and average and count and standard deviation and etc. There's all the geometric. I've never been quite sure why it has all of the trigonometric and geometric functions, but it has a bunch of stuff in there. A lot of statistical functions. All right, a couple little things I want to show you too. So these are joins. There's a couple of them where most of your joins will be more on this level, just one join or so. If you want to be adventuresome, you can do this. We'll look at the assignment in just a minute. But there's a couple of other things I want to show. These are insert, update, and delete. All right, whatever you do with a select doesn't affect anything, right? Selects just pull the data out. Even if you're doing math like this doesn't create any difference column in the table or anything. It's just in the results. But insert, update, and delete actually do change the table. And they're all dangerous in their own way. Insert is the least dangerous. Insert puts new rows of data in the table. The main danger there is that somebody could do a lot of damage to a database by just inserting a bunch of garbage. If you have a database full of garbage, it's not that easy, right? But it's not that bad. Update, you can destroy a database by accident. It's actually, I think, more dangerous than delete. And I'll show you. We will destroy this database, but I'll show you how to recover. Thing is, if you don't do it exactly right, there is no recovery. So I will show you though. But first, let's do inserts. And one of the things about inserts is, say, this is a pain. Say I wanted to do a new album. So I'm going to go up here. I think I have a diagram. So I'm going to do a new album and add it to inventory. So it's big here. So we have to purchase the album, right, if we're doing a new one. So we purchase the album. Then we pass that over to, I think inventory is probably off screen here. Where did inventory go? There's request.
Bottom right. Bottom right.
Way over the other side?
Nope.
Bottom right.
Middle right. Go right.
Right. Oh, there it is, inventory. So we purchase it, and then we put it into inventory. We also have to, if we don't have it already, we have to put it into album, right? So the thing about inserts is you actually have to insert here, insert, well, album probably, and then insert. So album is way over there, but insert into album and then insert here. So it's a lot of inserts, and this is typical. When you've broken things up to enter any kind of information, you have to probably insert into several tables. In a web form or something, it's all done in the background, right? So you don't have to see that it's multiple inserts. You just fill in the fields, and then they get distributed to where they go. But in the database here, and typically there would be something under this, like with these inserts. But I want to show you, we'll do some inserts. First, I'll insert into album. So we haven't, the thing will be in album. So I'm going to do insert into album. And that should be into. And I'm going to do a parentheses. And actually, I'm going to cheat and drag the column folder over here. The column folder gives you all the fields. I did make these auto numbers, so I don't need the album number. Album ID, but if you didn't make it an auto number, you do have to enter it, right? So I'm going to then do values. Anybody have a good album to enter? I just date myself. Oh, let's see. What have I listened to that's newer than the 70s? I do listen to new stuff. I like indie.
Green Day?
What?
Green Day?
Yeah, I think Green Day's already in there, aren't they? They're in there as an artist. I'm not sure that I have an album by them in there.
American Idiot.
Yeah, okay, let's do it. So it's American Idiot.
Mm-hmm.
So I have no idea the year. It was 1990 something? Or was it 2000? 2004?
Yeah.
I knew it was a little bit old. Studio? I have no idea.
Studio 880.
Studio 80?
880. 880.
A80?
Like the number 880.
Like that?
880. Yeah.
800?
880. Without the A.
Oh, 880. I never heard of that studio. Although I've seen the album.
I just Googled it.
Ah. And I need to get rid of that extra quote. All right, so I can do this. Now I insert the album. And if I look in album, so I do select star from album, we can see that American Idiot is there. Right. So I want to do the purchase. So I'm going to insert into purchase. And again, for purchase, I can go. This is a neat detail that's actually only seems to work in SQL Server, but I can drag the folder columns over and gives me all the code things. Again, it's auto-numbered, so I don't need that primary key. The purchase date, I am going to say get date, which is a function that does what do you think? It returns the current date. So, and I'm doing two. I'm just randomly choosing one of my people. I have like 7 people. Actually, let's do a quick select from person. Yeah, 2 is okay. So I'm going to do that.
Does it automatically make a new primary key?
It does if you made it, if you created it as an auto number, which I did. So I didn't show you guys how to do that, so I assume you haven't. When you create it as an auto number, in code you can do it as you set it as an identity, 1-1. In the other thing, you have to go into the properties when you create the table, and you have to look for is identity, and you have to change all of that. I didn't think it was worth it because you're only entering 4 or 5 records. Probably wasn't worth it when I did it either. So, and the other thing is, not only is it kind of complicated to go find it, if you make a mistake, that number goes away forever. So if I tried an insert and it failed, the auto number for it would go away and it would go to the next number. That seems to bother people a lot when your primary keys go 1, 2, 3, 7. You know, it doesn't matter, but it seems to bother people. Whereas if you enter your own numbers, so the insert is always the same, right? It's always insert into, you list your fields, you provide a value, and then it doesn't know what is what. It's just 1, 2, 3, right? 1 goes to 1, 2 goes to 2, 3 goes to 3. You know, in this case, there's 2 of them, so this goes to get day, this goes to that. So when I insert that, it will be there. And again, we can do select star from purchase, and it should be the last and newest purchase, so there it's number 4. One reason I did that is I need the key, and there are some functions to get the key, but this works. So next I'm going to insert into purchase detail. So to add one new album, you have to do all this stuff. So, what? Oh, insert. And then I'm going to, the purchase ID was 4, right? And then the album ID was what? Uh, 6. What did we want to pay for it? 10. All right, so we have the purchase detail, and we could have bought several other albums there too. And then what you would do is they would all have the purchase ID of 4, and then you would change the album key of the amount. And then I'm going to, so I'm going to select from purchase detail. This is doing a lot what you were doing just in your forms, right? The thing there. So this is 8. So I'm going to insert into inventory, and this is the last insert. So one of the things, even though there's a graphical thing here, most people that work in databases would probably do most of their work with the SQL, with the code, rather than the, the GUI. So again, I'll do values, and the purchase detail ID is 8. Condition, oh, I think, I forget if 1, I think 1 is meant, but it might be just good. And let's say, since we did, let's make it worth 20. 100% markup, which is actually less than real markup usually is. They usually mark up more than that. Okay, so I've added a new album. And we've purchased it, and we have, it is there. Now, the inventory ID jumped from 10 to 18. And I remember why. Because I accidentally ran the inserts twice before. So I deleted all the repetitions. So because it's an auto number, all those things I deleted never come back. So it goes from 10 to 18. Again, it doesn't really matter. But it can be a pain when you're trying to move things around, when you're trying to type, knowing, because you don't know where the number is necessarily. There are some things you can do to help there are some functions to help return that. But. Okay. Does that make sense for an insert? The main thing I want you to know about it, the insert syntax isn't hard. The trouble is that because of the way the tables are, for any one event, there may be 4 or 5 inserts, right? Because you have to insert the data into a variety of different tables. And I think I asked you guys to insert like a new sale, right? You didn't necessarily have to do a new album. It could be something in the inventory. Also, we didn't do anything in ours to protect against selling the same album twice. There are things we should do. But all right, let's do updates. Unless you guys have more questions about inserts. Yeah.
I have a problem with mine. I didn't put like the album ID as well, and it's saying like I should.
Oh, so because it's required?
You cannot insert one ID, which is because it's the primary key.
Yeah.
Shouldn't update by itself without ID.
Only no, it might not. If you didn't make it an auto number, it won't. So you just need to type in a number for it.
Okay.
So you need to have it. Yeah.
Can you use this method to input all this?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah. This works just as well, and in fact, I think it's a little bit easier in some ways once you get the hang of it than edit top 200 rows or whatever. Yeah.
And I also have the problem that it says the insert statement, the number of inserts has to match the number of columns.
Right, which means that, again, it's matching this to this, this to this. So if you have more columns up here or more columns down here, then that's not going to work. I mean, what you have up here and the values you have down here have to match 1 to 1.
Oh, but in the form I have like 7 columns, but I only want to insert like 3 recommendations.
So if they're not required, just don't list them.
It's on the previous slide. It says the column, the information I have on the insert statement has to match the columns actually.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So it wouldn't automatically calculate the columns, right?
It should actually allow, if it's allowed nulls, what you do is you just either write null
Or can I just skip it?
or you just skip it. Well, you can't. So when you do the insert, just don't include it in the list.
Okay, I kind of agree with that, but I just wanted to do
Now, the album ID we probably have.
okay, because I didn't.
Yeah.
I need help with this.
But yeah, you can, when you do an insert, if you don't want to insert into every field, you only need to list the fields you're inserting into. If it's not required. If you made it required, you have to put something in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I inserted as get date,
That's really. Let's see. It should work. What do you want to do with a number? Is your type a character? Did you just change it?
change it to date.
Was it character before?
There was character around this one.
But it wasn't character when we did that one. Sorry.
And this one I put in.
Yeah. When I did the get date, let me look at that. That's back at.
Make
right
sure that
there.
your get dates work as well.
Yeah, so when I did that, that was into purchase. So let's select start from purchase. My suspicion is that it was character when you did that second one, because it had an asterisk like it hadn't been saved. So when you changed it to date, you may not have saved the change yet. You could delete that and see if it redoes it.
I just have an issue with it. I can't believe it. Because of this one. I think so.
Does it have a sub? Does it have a related value somewhere?
Just the artist ID. It would be information.
So let me see, so it's an album.
It's an album something.
So actually, artist album should be complete.
It's only Green Knight. It's only. It won't change. This is real.
So 2 doesn't exist, right?
Wait. Just like, oh yeah, now it's glitched.
Well, you had a 2 there, and it wouldn't allow that because you didn't have a value 2. Right, I mean, it wasn't a legal value or a foreign key. All right, so let's do updates and then deletes, and then we'll call it good. Taking more time than I meant. So updates are dangerous. I'm going to show you how to do it right, and then I'll show you how to do it wrong. So I'm going to actually do this. So updates change existing data. So I'm going to do a real quick select star from person again. Okay, so let's change. Who do we want to change? Let's change Deborah Brown to Debbie Brown. All right, just do a simple change. So I'm going to update person. I'm going to set first name, person first name. Equals Debbie. And I'm also going to change, let's do a comma there. I'll change the email to person email equals, so Debbie Brown. I can't type. At Gmail. Now, this is the key part, where person ID equals 2. Okay, so we're changing those things about this person. So when I run that, and then I go back to person, notice it's now Debbie and Debbie Brown at gmail.com. So you're changing existing data. It's a really important thing to be able to do, right? I'm going to move this. I just noticed it's underneath my, okay. So I'm going to do a bad one here. So updating is really useful to be able to change a value. And you should almost always, it isn't almost, you should almost always make sure that you have a where clause that specifies what row you're going to change. So what would happen if I were to say update person set last name, person last name equals Smith? What if I were to run that just like that? What would happen?
Change all.
Everybody would be named Smith. Now we've got 5 records. That's not a horrible disaster, but imagine if you had 5 million records. And everybody was now named Smith. I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do a little bit of safety thing first. I always consider that the sort of the final worst matrix thing. You know, if I did all the Smiths. I don't know if you saw that. So I'm going to do, before I run this bad one, I'm going to do begin tran. And basically this is, I'm going to begin a manual transaction. And it's not enough to type that. You have to actually execute it. All right. So what that does is it begins at every command you do is a transaction, but typically they're just implicit. It'll just do what you asked and then it's done and goes on. By doing this, I'm manually taking control of the transaction. there are bad things about this. You could do it in a stored procedure or something, and it's fine. But when I do it like this, and I'm talking here, if this database were being used by lots of people, I've just frozen it. All right, I've locked it. I've taken control of it until I finish this transaction. That's not a good thing generally when in a database that has lots of users. But it's the only way to have an undo. There's no undo otherwise. So I'm going to do this. And it says 5 rows affected, right? So if I do select from person, they are indeed all Smith. Right? Everybody is named Smith. You could do this by accident pretty easily. Just forget your where clause. Or you don't make it, you don't make the where clause specific enough. So say you had 20 people named Smith, and you did set something where last name equals Smith, you'd be changing it for all 20 people. Right? You have to be careful what your thing is. Now, because I did this as a tran, one of the things that I can do is I can roll back tran. So it hasn't actually been written to the database. It's in suspense. It's in the temp database. So when I roll back, it says that's successful. And when I go back up to select star from person, everybody's back to the way they were. But if I had not done this or this, there would be no undo. It would just be everybody's named Smith. So the only way to correct that is to restore from a backup, which we don't have. And you'd restore from the backup, and then you'd restore the logs. Remember how there's a log file too? You would restore up until the moment before you did your really stupid thing. But you could get fired for doing something like that. And it's so easy to do, right? All you have to do is be distracted for a minute. So there are ways around it. One of the things is just to don't ever give anyone permission to update directly. You couch it in other programming where it won't do an unsecured update. But updates are usually, people enter things wrong or things change, right? So you do have to be able to go in and change existing records. It's just that it's a really dangerous command. All right, deletes are actually less dangerous in some ways, but they're dangerous. I'm just going to delete from, so if I delete from person, if I were to do this by itself, it would try to delete everything in person. Again, generally you want a where clause. So I'll say where person ID equals 1. So we'd be deleting our only employee, except that it won't let me. Anybody have an idea why it won't let me? It won't let me because this table is a primary key. It's related to other tables. Person 1 is also employee. So until I delete the employee, I can't delete the person. Does that make sense? You can't delete the parent of a child. Now you can delete the children at will, but you cannot delete the parent of a child. Which sounds really cruel, I guess. If I go to a child table like employee, I could delete that right away, except that it's used elsewhere, right? Employee appears in sale, I think. So it can't be until I'd have to remove it from all the other tables that it's related to. But let's see, what else where do I have? Do I have anything, a child table where I could do? I'm just looking at my tables. I could probably delete things from inventory. And I could delete from artist album. There are places I could delete, but generally you can't delete if there's a related record. But this is the syntax for deleting. In general, except where there are legal requirements, people don't delete things from databases. Never know when you can make a use of it, particularly for big data types of analysis and things. All right, let's look at the assignment, and then I will quit talking.
Should we save this?
Yeah, and I'm going to put it, I mean, if you want to save it, you can. So it's just file save, right? So if you do like file, this is query 1. So I would just save query 1 as, and you can save it as whatever you want. I'm actually going to paste it. So Control A, Control C. I'm going to put it in the blog. So, and then we'll look at the assignment. I'll leave it there. I'll look at the assignment, then we'll do the. Guess I haven't been in here. Probably should have logged in earlier. All right, so 220. So assignments or modules will work. So this is the last one for the Vincent's final. There is a little quiz which you can do at your, whenever you want, and it lets you through 3 times, and it's multiple choice. It's not hard. So we did the 5 or 10. Some of you are still entering some data, and that's fine, right? Write queries for these questions. So these are the kinds of questions to use the SQL for. What albums do you have, basically, in stock? And I'm going to be real loose. If you like, in stock is kind of you would think excluding sales, but if you just do your query of albums, it'll be okay. Who are the customers? How many albums did you sell on a given date? So if you've only got one sale date or something, that's fine. Add a new album and enter it into the database. So that's kind of what we just did, right, with the purchase and all that. Depending on your tables aren't quite the same as mine. Create a sale, and in the sale detail have 2 albums. So 1 sale, 2 albums. And then just the ideal way to do this is like a screenshot of the queries and the answers, and you can paste it into Google Docs. Worst case scenario, if you just give me the SQL, I'll be okay without the screenshots. But the ideal way is the query and then the screenshot of the answer. And Google Docs works real well, and then just link it. Or you could do it in, I don't think they have Word out here. You have to do Office 365 or Notepad or something. WordPad will allow pictures. I will give you the rest of today, and if we need, there'll be some time to work on this next time too. We'll also, Monday, we will install MySQL. It's a quick install, usually. Okay, so let me copy this to the blog so you have that, and shut the video off. Hopefully it has sound. Ooh.